Good day, young Mississippi scientists. Welcome back. We're going to continue our work with understanding science because, as we know and as we understand, it's about science. So, today we're going to focus on asking questions. What's the importance of asking questions? Last time you were with me, we made observations. It was quantitative observations and qualitative observations. So now that we understand how to make observations, well, those observations kind of prompt us to ask questions. And we want to know what's the importance of asking questions. So we're going to discuss the importance of asking questions as it relates to the whole process of inquiry. Inquiry is a search. We want to find out something. So we go on an inquiry process, or we take an inquiry process. And then we want to talk about those things that we ask questions about. Well, we observe stuff, we see it in our everyday life, in our environments, and we ask questions about those things, but what do we call those things? Those are called phenomena. So we're going to understand what phenomena is. And then we want to examine or look at different types of questions that can kind of sort of lend to scientific validity. We just can't ask a question and it be a science question. We have to ask a question that's going to allow us to have an opportunity to explore more about a topic or explore more about something that we've seen, explore more about something that we've heard. Remember, science is not as hard as we might think it is. We already are expert observers. So now that we are experts in making observations, let's see what kinds of questions we can come up with after making those observations. I think I'm a little famished and I might need something to eat first. So I think I'm going to have a piece of an apple that I really, really just like. Oh, this looks like the same apple that we made observations with. So hey, just a minute here. Oh my, this apple looks so delicious. Such a bright white color on the inside. Make some observations there. Just let me look at it quickly. It looks good. I wonder, how does it taste? So if I taste it, it tastes wonderful. So that's an observation as well. And if we can remember what kind of observation is tasting, right. It is a qualitative observation. All right. I talked about the color of the inside of the apple too. That's also a qualitative observation. But this smells awesome. Wow. So now that I've kind of given myself a little energy, I'm going to set my beautiful white apple to the side, and we're going to go ahead and talk about observations. Let's look at this again. It's just awesome. Can we get a look at this? I just want you to see how beautiful this apple really, really is. Okay, so we're going to set that to the side and get on with talking about asking questions. So sometimes, adults might tell us, oh, you're asking too many questions. But I will say asking questions is an essential part of life. We ask questions about everything. And if we take a look at this particular piece of information here, we'll see that questions are important simply because they help us to figure out things. They give us a way to look at our environments, and we want to understand how things in our environment interact with each other. How do birds interact with trees? Yeah, birds interact with trees. So we also want to make sure that they also give us an opportunity to identify important aspects. So if I'm looking at something and I'm observing something, I might see something that I can really take a hold to, or it really grabs my attention, and I want to see what's going on with that particular phenomenon. Now, I want you to take note of the word phenomena. So that's going to become very, very important to us. And then questions are also important because they help us to guide scientific research. We become researchers, or we want to do research simply because we've seen something, we've observed it, we heard it, we tasted it, we touched it, we measured it, and now we have some questions, and now I want to find out more about it. So I'm going to, do some research behind that. So let's get on with understanding more about questions. What is a good science question? If you take a look at this information, we know that questions like, what happens to salt when it is mixed in water? Is that a good science question? Does it prompt you to want to know more? Does it prompt you to do any type of further investigation? Yes, it does, because I want to know. I might run and ask my grandma, well, Grammy, what happens to salt when it's mixed in water? She'll tell me. So I might go out to a book, a favorite, science book. It'll tell me. Also, why did the lights go out when I plugged in my television? Is that a good science question? I just got this big, beautiful TV, came home, I plugged it in, and boom, the lights went out down the hall. What was the purpose for that? That was a phenomenon. So, does it prompt me to research? Does it prompt me to go figure out? Does it prompt me to find out? Well, yes, it does. So that would be a good science question. Also, questions help us to develop wonder. You ever found yourself asking or thinking, I wonder why? I wonder what? I wonder if. So I wonder, how would a plant grow under different kinds of light? Does that prompt you to do further investigation or further research? You see plants growing outside in the sunlight all the time, and they're beautiful and gorgeous and they smell great. But I wonder if I grew a plant under a blue light, what would happen? I wonder if I grew a plant under red light, what would happen? I wonder if I grew a plant under some green light, what would happen? So good questions help us to understand what's going on, or help us prompt us to investigate what's going on. A good question encourages you to further explore what you have observed. Those are good science questions. Okay? So now, what do we ask questions about? We ask questions about phenomena. What is a phenomenon? Well, phenomena is anything that really happens in our environment. Phenomena are all around us. We see airplanes in the sky. That's phenomena. Because we look up and we say, oh my God, it's a bird, it's a plane. Yes, it is a plane. So, hey, and you want to know. I think you want to know. Don't you want to know? Who wants to know? Can anyone tell me? Raise your hands if you want to know how that big, heavy thing that looks like a pile of metal just stays up in the air. Who wants to know that? Good job. You want to know that. I know you want to know that. I do too. All right, so questioning phenomena. What is a phenomenon? Who knows what a phenomenon is? I want you to take a minute to look at this particular beautiful picture. That's awesome. Have you all ever seen something like this before? Who's seen this before? What do you think it is? All right, so I'm looking at this. This is something that happens naturally. But who has a question? What question would you ask if you saw this? If you walked outside one day and you saw this, what would you do? What would you ask? All right, I think I might want to ask, do we have three suns, or is that three suns? Or how does the sun get divided into three different parts? What's going on? I want to know what's going on. I'm beginning to wonder about that. So this is what we call a phenomenon. This is something that happens naturally, and we want to know more about it. So these are phenomena are things that happen in our environment, and things are happening in our environment all the time. Phenomena can be natural or man-made. The picture that you're looking at right now is a natural phenomenon because it just naturally happens. And we want to find out why it happens. Something that's a man-made phenomenon could be an airplane in the sky. Or, let's think back, way, way back. Can you think way, way, way back? And let's say a person saw the first car ever made rolling down the street. And they looked and said, what do you think they said? Wow. Exactly. They looked and said, wow, what is that? Or, I know you might not remember, but maybe you've seen in your textbooks, maybe you've seen in on television somewhere about the first airplane being built and the trials that, you know, the developers or the inventors had to go through. But once that airplane took off, the observers were there. And can you imagine what they were saying? Wow, look at that thing. What is it? What do we call it? You know, how does that happen? Why does that happen? What's going on here? So they got excited. I'm sure they got excited. Would you get excited about that? I think you would get excited about that. Probably a little scared, but a little excited too. But that's a man-made phenomenon. So phenomena can be naturally occurring, or they can be things that man makes or that's man-made. And also, they incite wonder. And we talked about that a little while ago. A phenomenon, when you see it, when you engage it, and you are embraced with it, you wonder, like, how is that? I wonder why. I wonder if. I wonder how. So those are phenomena, things that we naturally see in our environments. So let's look at some examples of phenomena. If we go outside in the middle of the night sometimes, we look up into the night sky. How many of you all have seen the moon that looks like this? And when you've seen the moon looking like that, what did you say? Or, you know, what kinds of things did you think about when you saw the moon looking like that? I've always felt that the moon was a very magical and mystical thing. So I like looking at the moon. So I might want to look at that and like, you know, well, why is the moon not a full circle this time? You know, I came out the other day, last week, and it was a full circle. But today it looks like a little crescent roll. So why is that? This is a natural phenomenon. Man doesn't have anything to do with it. It's not man-made. It's just a natural phenomenon. Another example of a natural phenomenon. Let's say we're walking outside, and I'm going to my favorite oak tree to sit down and read a book. How many of you have a favorite place that's outside in nature? You do? That's awesome. So let's say you look up on the tree and you see this lizard. The lizard is green in some parts, and it is grayish, brownish in other parts, but it kind of looks like the same color as the tree. And you ask yourself, I wonder what's going on with this lizard. Is it okay? Is it sick? But that's something that naturally happens. Then that's something that we want to explain and further research. So I may be prompted to, you know, do further research into lizards and find out that lizards are, you know, there are various kinds, many kinds of lizards, and, you know, they change their skin color for various reasons or what have you. So it prompts you, when you see that phenomenon, you observe it, and you begin to ask questions about it, you're prompted to do more research. Okay, so let's look at another phenomenon, which is the airplane. And we talked about the airplane. The airplane is an example of a man-made phenomenon. So, of course, I want you to remember, we have two types of phenomena, natural phenomena, and then we have the man-made phenomena. Natural phenomena happens in nature by itself. Man-made is something that man makes, like the airplane. All right, so those are our types of phenomena. Those are things that we observe in nature, and those are things that we begin to ask questions about. So what are some questions that you might have about the moon changing shapes? Well, I might want to know, how often does this happen? That's one possible question. Or why does the moon change shape? Keep in mind, we need to be sure that we are asking, are we going to be prompted to do more research? What triggers a color change in the lizard? There has to be something going on in the lizard that's going to make this change happen, because it just seems to happen. I watched the lizard for a little while, and it went from the tree to the grass, and it just came completely green again. So how does this lizard know that a color change is needed? That's a good question. What's going on with that lizard and in that lizard's body to let him know that, hey, I need to change color? What allows the plane to stay airborne? What allows that big piece of metal to stay up there? Have you ever thought that to yourself? If you've ever been, have you all been on a plane before If you've been on a plane before, you just sit there and think, I'm in this big piece of metal floating in the middle of the sky. How is this happening? Can be kind of frightening. I know. I've been frightened sometimes when I've been on a plane. But let's take a minute to kind of get some practice about asking questions. First, I think I want to get a little bite to eat again. Oh, I'm going to get my apple. Oh my God. What happened to my apple? Look, my beautiful white apple is now all brown and ugly. I don't know. Can I eat it? Well, what we've noticed here is we've gone from my pretty white fresh apple to something that has changed colors on me. Guess what? Well, this is a phenomenon, and we have observed this. So let's look and see, what kinds of questions do you have behind this particular thing happening? I don't even know if I can eat this now. But what we can do is observe it. We can observe it, and then we can ask questions about it. I have my little magnifying glass here. Remember, we use tools to make observations, and the tool that I'm going to use right here is the magnifying glass. So I'm going to take a closer look at this and see if I see anything on here. I don't see anything on here other than just the apple itself, but it has changed colors on me. It has changed colors on me. So I don't even know if it's good to eat anymore. But what questions do I have about this process taking place? Obviously, something has happened, and we need to get to the bottom of this because I was hungry. Well, get out your handy-dandy notebook, and let's see if we can ask some questions. What kinds of questions would we ask? One, how did the apple change color? I would say, well, not how, but why. All right. Why was there a color change in my apple? Let me put my question mark. Why was there a color change? That's one question that we could ask. What are some other questions that we might be able to ask about this particular process that we see here? Another question I might have is, did a chemical reaction take place? Why would I ask that particular question? Well, why would you ask that particular question? Well, you say you heard your brother say, your brother is in high school, and he told you that when you see things change in color, a chemical reaction has possibly taken place? Is that what he said? Good job. Your brother pays attention in class. He's awesome. All right, so that's one question. Did a chemical reaction take place? Or, so is this going to prompt me to do further research? I can do further research. Why was there a color change? I am going to do further research in there to see if I can find an answer as to why there was a color change. So another question that we might have about this, what did the environment do to the apple? All right, what did the environment do to the apple? Well, let's look and see. This would be a good question simply because we did have the apple sitting out, and it was interacting with stuff that was in the environment. And we might want to ask ourselves, well, what's in the apple's environment that it could interact with? So that would be a good question. All right, so let's see if we can come up with another question that we could ask about what we're seeing. Okay, how does the apple change color? All right, so how did this happen? How does this process actually take place? I see that I started out with an apple that was white, it was fresh, and now I see that it is brownish in color, and I want to know, how did the apple do that? Is it something that it does on its own? Is it something that it does because of something else? But these are all questions that I have made from my observations. I'm sure there are some other questions that you may have. You can look to see if you do some further investigation with maybe your magnifying glass here. You can do some smelling test. I might want to smell it because I'm always making observations. So does the color change affect the way the apple smells? And sometimes we can smell like what we call waving the scent to my nose. So an apple smells the same, it feels the same. I'm afraid to see if it tastes the same. So I'm not going to do that. I just need to figure out, what is it that I've done, or what is it that has happened in the environment to make this happen to my apple? So again, now, did we do anything to make this happen? We did not do anything to make this happen. So I'm going to ask you, what type of phenomenon do you think this is? Is it a man-made phenomenon, or is it a natural phenomenon? Well, what you say? Well, Dr. Gaylor, you did cut the apple. Yes, I did cut the apple. But did I make the apple change? No, I didn't make the apple change. The apple changed all by itself. So is that man-made, or is it a naturally occurring phenomenon? What was that? Good job. This is a naturally occurring phenomenon because we did not do anything to make this happen. It just happened on its own. Now, I want to know, what can I do to stop this from happening again? Because I was really, really hungry. Weren't you hungry too? So, I mean, when your mom packs your lunch and you open up your lunch bucket and you find that your apples are all messed up, you kind of lose your appetite. So, to find out what can we do to stop this from happening, we need to come back and see what's going on in the next episode when we're talking about investigating, because we need to play Sherlock Holmes and find out who did this to my apple and how can we stop them from doing it again. So again, we've talked about asking questions. We ask questions because we want to know more about the things that we've observed. We ask questions that help us or prompt us to research further. And we're going to research what went on with this apple. And then we want to make sure that we are looking at phenomena. We understand what phenomena is. Know the difference between man-made phenomena and naturally occurring phenomena. And we ask questions about the phenomena that we observe. And of course, we always need to keep our tools ready so that we can make those specific and very special kinds of observations. So tune in and see what's going to happen next, because we need to get to the bottom of this. And remember, as always, have a chemtastic day, and it's all about science.